Today, David and I, we're bad at something. Maybe that's not surprising since you tuned into the Bad at CSS podcast. But ironically, I've been using this new API called the View Transitions API. You'd think that makes me good at it. It does not. It means I'm finding all the things that I'm bad at, and I want to talk to them with David today to help me kind of understand it more. It's almost like rubber ducking. You know what, David? Maybe this show is kind of like rubber ducking where, hey, I'm sucking at this. Can you help me? And then by me just telling you about what I suck at, I'll be like, oh, snap, dude. I answered my question.
I thought I'd just do the show so I didn't have to read MDN. So like when I don't know what an API does, I'm like, well, why don't I just start a podcast with Adam and then he'll just tell me what everything does and then I don't have to read. So I don't know. That's pretty good for me.
Healthy relationship, yin to yang, good to bad. Although in this case, I am bad and you are worse. So maybe this is the I'm sorry, I don't mean to make you sound that bad. I just know you haven't used it yet. So all right, so here's some things I suck at. Oh yeah, go ahead, jump in, man. Wait, catch your breath. Get your breath back.
I'm just saying it's true because I've seen View Transitions. So I guess let's set the stage. So Adam, like I said, I've said to the people in the past, Adam shouldn't be on this podcast because, we let him on anyways because he's not bad at CSS. He's humble and he will be like, oh, I'm bad at this. And, and then we kind of say like, oh, well, look at our CSS then. But Adam has been just pushing on View Transitions, just like one of the biggest people in the world on it. It's been amazing to see all the stuff that he's pushed out on it. Just amazing talks, amazing videos. It's awesome. We'll link everything in the show notes. I've been watching those. So, I've been really getting the work in on that. So today I'm going to be asking Adam questions and he's going to tell me what he's bad at. And I'm just going to, maybe be less bad by the end of it. So Adam, what are you bad at with View Transitions?
Awesome. I have to make two jokes though. They're just killing me. I'm like, oh, but all that work that you've been doing watching, your eyes must be really tired. You gotta give them a little relax the eyes.
I need those blue light glasses because it's just so much content.
The fatigue. Oh man, the eye fatigue is just killing me. Oof. And then the way you described me is so funny. It reminds me of people that you meet that are like, oh, I'm not very good at guitar. Can I see it though? Can I see the guitar?
That and is
then they
you.
grab the guitar and they're like, and you're like, dude, you said you're not good. And they're like, yeah, but I'm not that good. Oh, I only know one or two scales.
That is.
I'm not that good at guitar. I don't do that with CSS. I'd still show up and be like, clunky, plunky, de clunky.
No, it's not true. I've had sessions with Adam where I'm like literally showing him like a Figma design or just even like a sheet of paper. I'm like, well, how would I do this? And Adam's like, oh yeah, it's super hard. I'm not really good at that. Hold on 1 second. And he's like talking about it. And I'm like, wait, are you typing and talking at the same time? And he's like, yeah, hold on. And then I get a CodePen link and then it does it. And I'm like, and then the problem is I look at the CSS code and I don't know what so many of these things do in the CSS code. And I'm like, what's app property? And he's like, oh man, app property is rad. You got it. Okay. All right. So
good Adam impression.
So this is true. So one of the biggest reasons too I want to start this podcast with Adam is because I do want to eventually hear a time where he's like, I'm bad at this. And I'm actually like, yeah, you are. That is bad. So maybe today, maybe we'll hit it out the park on the first one. So Adam, please, what are you bad at?
Oh, geez. Okay. Transitions? I've been writing View Transitions for a while now, right? There's the SPA version and the MPA version, the SPA and the MPA.
Well, give us like a reason why. Sorry, I'm not sure what that was. Willy Wonka or Hansen for MMMBop.
It was Hansen. It was Hansen.
Okay. All right.
Although Willy Wonka, I should have chose that. That's way less embarrassing than
Hansen's great. Explain to me, why do I need View Transitions in the first place? Like, what problem is it solving? Why do I need to learn yet another thing in web development?
Yeah, there's a concept. I think it has a lot of use cases, but one of the core ones was obviously page transitions, but simultaneously flipping transitions where you were first, last, invert playing, which is just, it's fun to say. It's not fun to teach people what it means. You're like, oh, you flipped the animation. Like flip it. Yeah, you're like, yeah, oh crap, this is actually really hard to describe. But the reason that we would do that and why it's related to view transitions is you got first, which is almost like state one of your artboard or page one of your multi-page application. And then you have last, which is like the next place you're going to go or the next state of your artboard or whatever. So you got first and last. And then you have to measure both of those in the flip concept. You're like, okay, first, what size are you? Where's all your children? How many children are there? Oh, there's so much information to know. And anyway, I sound like Mickey there for a second. Then you go to the next one. Oh, how many children do you have? Goofy.
Oh my God. We already have the greatest podcast. This is awesome.
You got thing number two. Okay, so then last. So then you measure last. You say, okay, let's keep it real simple. Let's say you had like a square in the top left. Oh, this is even really fun, like view transitions demo that I built. Is you can animate the alignment properties of grid. So, which is not
Nice.
possibly, you can't animate those currently. They're discrete.
Right.
And they're not a value that can just transition over time. Okay, so what you could do with view transitions is you're like, the box is in the top left for the first state. In the last state, the box is in the bottom right. And then what you have to do before the view transition API is you would say, okay, first, where is the box? So you did the grid layout, you got the box, and the position would justify an alignment at the start position. And then you look at its getBoundingClientRect, which always sounds like you're looking at its butt. You know, I'm just like, I hate that API
intrusive
name.
API.
Yeah. You just call it a colonoscopy, right? You're like, all right, where are you at? getBoundingClientRect. And then you do last. So basically you apply the new grid positions and you say end, you justify and align to the end and it goes to the end. And then you have to like even do weird crap like maybe wait a frame for the browser to actually draw it there, right? It actually put it there. And then you say, all right, getBoundingClientRect endoscopy. I don't know. I'm not very good at those words. I don't even know if that one's related
you could be
to
endoscopy too.
colonoscopy, semi-colonoscopy. Is that a thing? That would be funny. That's a dev joke too. Okay, so I'm getting distracted just punning. But we got now we have last, right? So last, it's this box is aligned to the end. It's at the opposite corner that it was before. We get its positional data. I'll say it appropriately now. And now we have first and last. So it's like we're looking at these values on our hand. We know where the box was and we know where the box is. And then we invert, and that's the I in flip. We're inverting, which means we just measured last, which means the box is still at the ending position, but wait a sec, we want to animate from the first one to the last one. So we have to invert it. We have to say, undo the stuff I just had you do. Go back to where you were, foo. I just rhymed. I felt like I had to say it. So now the box is back to the starting position. We know the positional data of where it's from and where it's going, but we know that as data that's absolute information. And that's one of the frustrating parts about flip is like flip only deals in absolutes like a Sith. You're a Sith flip dealing in absolutes, but it gives you the information that you need to make a seamless animation. So now you can say play, and that's the P of flip. And play is just you saying, go from this positional data 1 set that I know of to positional data set 2. And voila, it didn't take much work at all, did it, David? This was easy peasy. I'm being sarcastic. Your box goes from the top left to the bottom right. That's the problem space that we've had with a lot of these things is that flip concept is the only way to do these like morphing, dynamic, positional in-page animations. And it's been kind of frustrating. Whereas like in Flash 20 years ago, you could just drag a box to the bottom right and it would be like, hi, we see that your box has 2 states now. You made a new keyframe, you dragged it somewhere. How would you like to tween between these? The concept of tweening has always been stuck inside of transitions in CSS. But now we have that with view transitions, and you can kind of just modify the DOM, and it will acknowledge, as long as you modify the DOM and prepare it, it will acknowledge a keyframe of 1, a keyframe of 2, your first and your last to get automatically created for you by the browser. And then you have the opportunity to just customize the tween. And that's why we can animate the alignment of grid. We can animate display none. We can animate anything we want because the browser sets up the keyframes, figures out the delta, and gives us the opportunity to set a duration, set an easing, and define keyframes if we want, and all sorts of cool stuff. Oh, I don't remember where I started, but I
Well,
ended all serious and I
you
started real
did.
goofy.
I like though that you made the Flash reference, because when it comes to Flash in modern day web development, there's this bit of like Simpsons did it, like bit of it. So whenever someone's like, "Oh, I'd really like it if we had this ability to do it," and someone's always like, "Well, in Flash." Like Simpsons did it, Flash did it, Flash had it, like, always like, it'd be really nice if I had this like stronger typed language, and like Flash did it. And it's like, oh, well, if I could just do sort of like this stuff with animations, Flash did it. And so it just reminds us of like how for this, there were its problems with it, but for this moment in time, we had like this all these things, and then we lost them all, and then now I guess for now we're getting them back. But what
Yeah,
I
now they're
love
just a distant memory.
what I love about your explanation is that when it comes, if you ask like some person, some CSS web developer who's, keeps up with some of the new things coming in, and you're like, hey, what's the View Transitions API? They'd be like, oh, that's that new one where like it makes page transitions and like element transitions easier. And then people are like, oh, okay. And then your explanation was, let me break down Flip for you just so you understand how painful that process is and how it solves everything. Because that was amazing. Because it's true. Like from what I've seen is that when you have to, there's a JavaScript API part of it, and then there is a CSS part of it. And so the JavaScript API is the document start view transition callback function, and that's sort of how you markate that you're doing your job and like things are happening. And from what I understand, so please, this is where I'm horrible at CSS, is that's like when the browser knows to take that like screenshot or the freeze dry your page at that moment and say like, okay, everything is kind of like this way. And then the CSS does its thing, makes its change, its animations, transitions. And then it goes, oh, I know to compare the results of these CSS transitions or the CSS, these operations with that original freeze dried snapshot I have. And then just like how you would see and like, any Adobe product that has like that, or Magic Move in like, on what's the other one? I don't know.
There's smart animate, there's
Yeah.
auto animate. What? Yeah,
Yeah,
smart move. I
exactly.
don't. Oh, that sounds like a screen
Smart.
flow thing. I don't know.
Yeah, basically all those things. And so you don't think about the animation too much. You just kind of just say like, I'm going to go over here, and then magically it happens. And then you don't have to know Flip. Is that, I assume that's, did I interpret that right?
Nailed it.
Yes.
And you know more than you say you do. You said the API name. You've
Well,
seen it. It internalized for you.
when you told me, you're like, today so Adam, I asked him like a week ago. I was like, hey, what do we want to do as a topic? He's like, I figured it out. And then literally this morning I was like, hey, what did I do? And he's still like, I figured it out. And then literally like 10 minutes beforehand, he was like, hey, let's do it on view transitions. And I was like, okay. And so I literally just start watching YouTube videos on 2x, and I'm like, and then I did like about, I don't know how long have we been recording, minus five
Dude, that's
minutes
like the
beyond that.
Matrix. That's like you plugged into the Matrix, man. You
Yeah,
did
basically.
2x YouTube videos. You're like, oh, what are you going? Oh, I know it
Yeah.
all.
You work in DevRel too. That's how it is. You're like, what do I need to know? Okay, and then you just plug the thing in the back of your neck, and then you learn it, and then you forget it all in about 10 minutes. So I won't remember the method name by the end of it. So that's okay.
Yeah, you did good though. Yeah, that's how you articulate that you're trying to. Before you change the DOM, you need to tell it. At least in the JavaScript API, the multi-page one, you don't have to tell it you're going to change the DOM because you click the link.
Yeah,
It's like, oh no, I'm destroying the page and
and
creating a new one. You don't
that's in
you don't need
Canary.
to
Now.
warn me first.
Yeah,
That's in
that's
Canary. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think I saw that was in Canary. That I'm very excited about, because getting like out of the box uh, transitions for like MPAs, multiple page applications, is awesome. Like to be able to just say like, oh, give me a crossfade here, and it doesn't have to be anything
It's so
fancy. And
sick.
it's one of those like instant wins where it's like, I think a lot of people, my assumption of what is going to happen
Haption.
when happen. I'm gonna, I like it.
It
Uh,
sounds like a real word.
it should be. What I think will happen is when it releases like in mass, and then adoption picks up, and I think obviously it will for this. Like it's shiny, it's fun, it's cool. I think we're going to see some of the most wild page transitions. And it's going to be like, when you first learn Photoshop and you're like, I'm going to use every single tool in this panel on this one project. And then Photoshop's just like, hold on now. When, and most people who are advanced Photoshop users are like, I maybe use like 6 on a day-to-day basis. And then I have to reach and relearn others. And I think like a crossfade's probably going to be just fine. And I think if you can hold that discipline of like, I'm not going to build, unless you know what you're doing or you have a great vision. But for your like, hey, for your personal site or for your any reading site, a crossfade is probably going to be just so massively better than just the jarring, flip, or not the flip of the white page or the dark mode or whatever it is. Like I think that to me is going to be like, that's my mindset is like for sites I'm going to add it to, I'm going to be like, let's start with the crossfade. And then if we have some inspiration or if there's some interaction, that's good. Then let's go from there. But I'm still very excited to like tap on a page and then see like a Star Wars like dun, dun, like flying out of the page or like some spiral Batman sort of thing where it's like
Doodly doodly doo.
I'm
Yep,
very
for
excited for
sure.
this.
It will happen. And I'm excited for that too. And then just hopefully they do reduced motion. So that way, in case
Yeah.
everyone, because otherwise we'll have a record amount of people throwing up on their computers after they view your blog. Be like, oh, I'm going to check out this sweet blog I saw on Twitter. I heard it used a new AP. People,
So
oh,
you just went through
sorry.
all of that. You talk about flip, you talk about, throwing up on your computer, which is a skill in of itself. But you still haven't told us what is bad? Because like you painted the picture of like how this is hard.
Yeah, what am I bad
like,
at?
Yeah, because it seems like because what you've sold me so far is, hey, flip, and I totally knew of flip, did not want to really go there because that was very complicated. But flip, I get the concept. It's tough. I don't have to flip anymore. I just call that method and set up my CSS, and I'm happy. Why? What's hard? Like if we're painting a picture of how the grass is greener, why? I guess are there some dry patches or something?
There is definitely some edges that are complex
Okay.
where I'm still struggling to like internalize them. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping to do today is like by explaining the parts that are really difficult for me, probably poorly describing them to you, you asking great clarifying questions, co-host, awesome co-pilot, maybe I will be able to internalize these more. And this is also means we're going to get into like some of the advanced edges of this feature, which might even be a sub goal of this podcast. I'm just
Ooh.
now realizing that if we talk about what we're bad at, it's probably the hard parts, which makes it probably a kind of advanced podcast.
I love sub goals. I'm always in Asana creating tasks and subtasks and milestones and sub milestones. You're speaking my language, man.
Goals on goals on goals, goals on goals on goals, more goals.
So yeah,
Just roll them up. Just a
what is something like give me an example. What's something you did lately where like I want to get like did you have one of those moments that we all have as developers where you're like, I'm gonna build this is gonna be great, and you run it and you're like, this is so far from what I wanted to do. And then you're like, and you literally takes you like an hour, and then you're still like, okay, well now I maybe can see what I want to do, but it's pretty far from what I want to do. Like,
yes. Okay. So here's what happened to me the other day. And then this will lead us into the parts that are really fuzzy for me. I made a morphing button demo. And I
oh
saw this.
yes,
I
great
was
video.
on some app. I don't remember where I was. I think I was on my mobile phone or something like that. And I hit a button and it was like sending and had a cool icon. And then it transitioned to do another thing. And the button's width grew to fill the content. And then, stuff happened and then it shrunk and then it grew and I was like, that's a multi-state transitioning morphing button. I was like, that's really cool. I see these all the time. That would really be a pain in the butt to try to animate on the browser because you'd have to flip, right? You'd have to know what's the width after the text changes and all this crap.
So you're
And so
like,
I was like,
let's do
okay,
it.
I was like, I'm going to go build this with view transitions. This will be easy. At least, that's what my mind always says. It's like it sees the pieces so clearly, like these are the capabilities that it takes. And then I sit down, I'm like, ooh, there's some tough parts. So anyway, I made a button. You click it, and sure, it changes the amount of text in it. So let's just say it gets wider and it gets smaller and it gets wider and it gets smaller. The first step in this task for me was to bring in some JavaScript. I had to call document.start view transition, and then I set the inner HTML of a button. And then that gives me an immediate crossfade between states, which is really nice, actually, that's what it'll do. So that you can do anything you want to a node. This is in React. Also, you could theoretically put this into the component lifecycle architecture. That if its tree changes, you call start view transition, and then it just elegantly crossfades between the old and the new one. I'm telling you, like, this is a core thing that needs to be in. Anyway, okay, so that's the first step. The second
Adam,
step was I needed to.
No, so you just made another JavaScript framework.
I just made it just dropping bombs. I need to go fork every framework.
Yeah, you just made another
I'll just go
JavaScript
add this
framework.
one-liner. Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I just had to say that. It was
It was good. No, it was worthy. Okay, so now I've got the JavaScript API calling. I've prepared the browser before and after. It's cross-fading my things. But that's not the effect that I want. I don't want a cross-faded button. I want a morphing button. So to begin morphing in the view transition API, you give it a view transition name. So I go write some CSS. I say select buttons, or I only had one on the whatever. Select this button, give it a name, and I called it. Who cares? That is what I called it. No, that isn't what I called it, but I should have called it that. We're going to call it that now. So the who cares button now has a view transition name. This is where things start to get more complicated. I gave it a name and I clicked my demo and it starts morphing. But the thing is, the browser is in the View Transitions API very concerned with aspect ratios. So if you've got a button that's kind of in a 4x3, it's got like an icon and a short word, and then you go to a really wide button that has like a long message in it, when it preserves the aspect ratio, it has to scale the thing visually up to the width, and it has an undesired result. You literally see the thing scale up and scale down between the two states, and you're like, this is not the morphing button that I wanted. I wanted a morphing button that sort of was squishier and only changed the width. I only want to change the width, really. Like the height needs to stay stationary. So in the View Transitions API, there's a way to target the old state and the new state as it's going to be transitioning. And they're called View Transition Old and View Transition New. And inside of those functional pseudo selectors, you put the name, which we just decided so elegantly is who cares. Also, how fun is that to just say functional pseudo selector? You're like,
functional pseudo select. That is definitely like a conference one where you're like in the hallway at a conference and you're like, well, I was using the functional pseudo selector, and then someone sitting there is like, damn it, I don't know anything.
oh shit, I should totally know what that is.
That's like that Joey from Friends where he's talking to the encyclopedia salesman who is Penn Jillette, and then he's like, have you ever talked to your friends and not know what you're talking about? And he does the flashback, and then he's like there's a little head shake, like as everyone's talking to him about complex matters. Like, yeah, that's definitely one of those moments. That's a functional pseudo selector.
Functional pseudo selector. I'll just spell it out just so it's clear too. It's : view transition old open parentheses. This is the functional part. So the pseudo part was the dots. The functional part's the parentheses. So it takes parameters. CSS is not a real programming language though. So it's not like there's parameters and functions and types or anything. Yeah, there's nothing like that in
totally
CSS.
Not.
So it's not real. Totally fake language. Anyway, so this fake language is taking parameters inside of a function. It's posing. It's just a poser language. And you pass your name in there. Who cares? So this lets you specify which old pseudo element you're looking to target and which new one by that name. So I immediately, and I'm like, okay, if I've got an element that's maintaining its aspect ratio and I don't want that, I need to target the old element and the new one, and I need to make them not do that or whatever. So I'm like, okay, aspect ratio. I'm totally winging it at this point because I didn't get what I wanted. I got this like zoomy, scaly thing, and in my mind, I thought I was going to already be done.
It sounds like a lizard, a zoomy, scaly thing. Fast lizard.
It's a snake. Right. Okay. So I'm trying to solve a problem that I didn't know I had until I experienced it. And this is where I was bad at the thing. In my mind, I thought I was going to be done just giving a view transition name. Usually giving something a view transition name and letting it morph by default in the browser is top notch, and you're kind of done. unless you want to change the timing or something like that. So I'm not done. And here I am writing this selector to look at the view transition old, who cares? View transition new, who cares? And I'm trying to tweak the styles. I'm trying to like tell the browser, like, don't do the thing that's usually elegant. Do something new and stupid. And
See, this is my theory. My theory coming out into play that no one's going to do like the elegant, the classic thing. Like we have to over engineer it. And this is your story of like, I wanted someone to click on a button. And now here is where I am.
Here I am. And I tried setting like a height on it. I think I set like a height of like 2 line height, 2 LH.
Mhm.
And I was like, ooh, that's clever. Yeah, I'll just take the height of the thing, fix the height, and then it won't do the scaly dumb thing. It kept doing the scaly dumb thing. It totally didn't care. It was like, I maintain aspect ratios, you fool. You thought you could give me a height. And I was like, I did think I could. Then I tried messing with the aspect ratio, and that wasn't working either. And essentially, I'm lucky and I get to talk to the engineers that work on this stuff. And I go complain. And I'm like, so here's some secret sauce that you all don't know. Adam is so bad at CSS. He frequently goes to the engineers who built the thing and says, I'm not smart enough. And they go, no, you're not. Here's the answer. And I'm like, sweet. Now I get to go look smart on Twitter. Hey, everyone, here's how you do a super cool morphing button with just a couple lines of CSS. It totally didn't take me like 5 hours and a whole bunch of conversations with engineers.
Behind every DevRel tweet is 6 engineers being like, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. No, switch that.
100%. And basically they're like, yeah, you're getting the aspect ratio thing. You don't want that. So just set height and width to 100% on both the thingies, on the old and the new. And I was like, you just set the height and the width to 100% like that. 100% usually is a really crappy value.
That never works.
100% doesn't work for jack anywhere, like that is such a stupid percentage. Okay, I'm being sarcastic. It has its moments. Anyway, whatever. So I'm like, those engineers, they don't know what they're talking about. I do height and width one, and then it works. And I'm like, gasp. Why does this work? And then I like go into DevTools and I open up the animation DevTools and I slow it down to 10% so that my stupid brain, my slow brain can see what's actually happening. And I can see. So this is where we're going to talk about an interesting aspect of view transitions. It works with images mostly.
Whoa.
So it takes a screenshot of your DOM node.
Oh,
so when you say start view transition, it takes a screenshot of your DOM node. So it's right, it's got like pixel data, and then it takes a screenshot of your other node. But it, depending on the new state, it's usually an alive version of it. But they still had to screenshot it and do some stuff. So like if there's an animating element in it, if it's a video, it'll continue to play as it transitions in. So it's like alive. The view transition new is alive in some ways. It's not necessarily as alive as when it's done. Okay, whatever. Now I'm just confusing you. But let's just imagine you have 2 images, one is small and one is large. And when I told them through this selector to be height and width 100%, they form fit into the button itself. And that's what caused the morph effect that I wanted, because I just wanted the width to change. And if you think about it, that's all that was changing. I changed the length of text in the button with inner HTML. It became wider. And so now it's forcing the image to fit inside of there. Almost like if you did a background image and you told it to fit height and width 100%, it's going to squish in there, which also means, because this is an image of the button, the text is squished. Just like if you went into Photoshop and you reduced the width of the button by hand and you watched all the text squished together, not in like a responsive reflow way, but like in the pixel data just squashing together.
Right.
So that's how the effect works. And that's the result I ended up shipping, because it was only a couple lines of CSS. The squishing is totally so fast that it's imperceivable. And the text is all legible. If you're on a screen reader, they don't know that images got created. All they know is new text showed up. So it reads out loud to them, just as you'd expect. There's all sorts of good things that happen in here. But here's where I'm bad, David. Here's where I get worse, David.
Oh, I thought we were hit the resolution.
No, we are just at the tipping point of which I can start talking about the 2 other pseudo selectors that failed me, that I wanted to use, but since I don't understand them, they weren't applicable. And
were they functional? Were they functional?
Yeah,
okay.
two
right.
additional
functional
pseudo selectors
I had
for
to
the
say
View
it.
Transitions API. You gotta. It just
I had to feel good about
sounds cool.
myself. So yeah.
They're pure functional. I'm like, how can we embellish this? Whatever. We've got two more now, and these are the ones that I kind of wanted to speak about today that I'm bad at, and maybe if I explain them to you, it'll make sense to me. I'm still doubtful because this is like my fourth time trying to understand these things. There's view transition image pair and view transition group. Bramus, a colleague of mine, knows what these are. He is smarter than me. And he's like internalized it. I asked him about it like a couple weeks ago in Amsterdam. He's like, it's this and that. It's totally easy. And I walked away going, damn it.
Yes,
I
it is. I
I
too also find
I
those
nodded my head.
concepts to
Yeah,
be
I was like,
easy.
yeah, it is. You did good explaining that. And I still don't know. I still don't know what this means to me. So, okay, so let's talk about the first one, which is view transition image pair. And you can pass the name that you gave the name to your view transition, like who cares? So you'd be view dash transition dash image open parenthesis, who cares, close parenthesis. And that would target both of them at the same time. Or so I thought. Because I wrote that selector and said height and width 100% as like a refactor. I was like, I'm smart enough. I don't have to target old and new with this comma and all this junk. I'll target the pair. And then I try to target the pair and it's like doesn't apply the styles because the pair is it's like a container for each of the
Mhm.
individual screenshots.
Oh,
And
okay.
that container lives inside of another container called view transition group, which also takes the same name of who cares.
I see where you're
I'd
going
like to give
here,
you an
I think.
opportunity to ask questions really quick.
So if you were, I think I know where you're going here because you're basically you're not targeting what you think you're targeting. Is that sort of the problem? Like you're writing code and then it's applying somewhere else. And then you're like, why is this happening the way it's happening? And it's doing its job. You just don't fully understand the job that it's doing yet. Am I somewhat close
Yes,
here?
you're definitely on the right track. Like what we have to study, or at least I have to try to explain well, is that there's two containers to these two images because like here in my mind and the way it looks there's two images that just transition right
Right.
the crossfade is really easy you're like they just crossfade out and you don't think about them having a container let alone having another shared container they just feel like absolutely positioned free
Oh, I
floating free
see.
living
Yeah.
hippie smoking elements on the page right
Yeah. And they have a relationship with each other that you're not totally familiar with, like
yeah
within the
but it
container.
turns out the browser puts them in this concept called an image pair, and it has a concept of a transition group. So there's the transition image pair, transition group. One of those containers, and I'm not really sure which one yet, I can't remember. I'm going to try to scrub the document here to find out because I'm bad at this. One of
Oh,
them manages the positional morphing.
okay.
Like the transform that needs to happen, the X and Y differences between one and the other. And it might even have like a larger group that anyway, I don't know how to visualize this very well. Oh, you know what? Bramus has a really good visual. I should try to pull it up really quick. He shows the images themselves, then the group, and then the other thing, and you can kind of see why
Okay.
it's all there. But okay, so yeah, we have the image pair and the image group. What is the so it's the view transition group that does the position and the transform and also handles width and height apparently. But I bet that's width and height of the container, not the width and height of each individual item. So then we have we have the view transition image pair. What does the image pair do? Hmm.
This is like live debugging.
The image pair has to do with how these will mix blend mode together.
Hmm.
And it has isolation isolate. Yes. So it says
Okay.
here's from Jake Archibald's article. It says the old and new views have mixed blend mode plus lighter, and the view transition image pair has isolation isolate. Oh shit, I was already wrong about it. Okay, so each individual image has mixed blend mode plus lighter. The pair has isolate, and this is required to create a crossfade. So the isolation plus each of the children means they're only going to blend with each other and they're not going to blend with the entirety of the page. Got it. Okay, so the image pair is specifically for isolation so that mixing in the blend modes and the crossfade can be in a contained thing that doesn't interact with the whole page, but they're isolated to each other. That also makes sense then why the view transition group is the one that can handle some of the morphing effects, the transforms and the transitions there. Okay, I think I got a little bit of clarity from that. Did you?
Well, I'm glad I could
Kind of
help.
question?
It's why I'm here, just just be there, sage wisdom, sage advice, help you through your problems. It's just, that's why we do this podcast together.
Here's a question: which Muppet is the one that sings "Rubber Ducky, you're the one"?
That's
You make
Kermit,
bath
man.
time so much fun. Is that why I'm singing a Kermit voice?
Yes. Is that why I'm doing a perfect impression of him?
I thought it was like Bert and Ernie
I thought it was Kermit.
or Elmo.
Man, now
Is
you're
Kermit has a
is that
rubber
element?
duck in the
Yeah,
bathtub?
I'm pretty sure it's Kermit. All right, let me look this
I
up.
thought it was like Bert. Isn't Bert the one who's always in the bathtub and Ernie is like cooking or
No, you're
something?
right. I have kids too. Oh my gosh. I have to scrub this out.
We're bad at Sesame Street too,
Bad
everybody.
at
Bad at the
Sesame Street.
Muppets.
I'm like, who's the guy who counts? You're like, it's the. I'm like, yes, it's also Kermit. Oh my god.
Kermit
That's
is the guy
Muppet
who
Babies
counts.
2 versus Sesame Street. We're like way off on our IPs. We're like, is it Darth Vader? I'm unsure. I'm unsure.
Kermit, I am your father.
Oh my gosh. No, I mean, one of the things that I have a big question about view transitions, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, not because I actually know the answer, but just because like I just know how life works. But with the thing about and the thing about animations normally is that you're like, oh, okay, I see how to do that. And you're like, okay, so I get kind of how request animation frame works, or like, okay, I see how to write these keyframes now. Okay, that's great in CSS. Okay, all right, great. And then everyone's like, oh no, you can't animate the width. Don't do that. That's bad. Oh, okay. Oh, well, what if I want to animate this other? No, there's like 6 properties you can animate. I'm like, but there's a lot of properties in CSS. And people are like, yeah, but you can only animate these 6. And then you're like, oh, why? Thinking you'll hear some CSS ability. And they're like, well, there's the GPU. And you're like, Jesus, I'm a front end developer, not an AI developer. And so with these, what can I animate performantly? Am I still stuck to all of my, transform based properties and opacity and all that, or do I have a little more breathing space?
This stuff is it's tough stuff. I'm sending you a link right now. It's Bramitz's visual for the groups and the pairs,
Oh, nice.
and then you can fact check me and see how did I do.
Ooh, you were right on the group part. Like we're on our own form of latency right now, answering different parts of the podcast. But yes, view transition group, view transition image pair, it's transitioning as I'm reading it. So I'm like, I'm having a
The
hard
old
time.
and the new or
It is.
crossfading,
It's
yeah.
doing its crossfading. I'm like, read it fast. View transition old root. Yes, I think you were right on this, and this is. Let's see how good I view the source on this one. Okay, you know what? That's way less elements than I thought it would be, and way less CSS. That's 151 lines of CSS. That's pretty cool. But it's got app property in
He's
there,
pro
which we're
status.
gonna we're gonna need an episode on that, because every time I see app property, I'm like, right? It's like the future of CSS that lets you have properties and stuff, and we like it because it's good.
It's
But
typed CSS. It's like AS2 to AS3.
yeah,
We have these variables version 3
nice. I like
stricter
that you're completing this podcast with another, flash reference with
flash
ActionScript
reference.
there.
Oh
Yeah, that's
man,
true.
you should hear
That's what
my
we do
rant
here.
about how the movie clip component was way ahead of its time.
Oh yeah. Well, we could do an episode on that.
We could. Yeah, it had life cycle methods. It had a timeline built in. You could tween. You could go back in time. It was just like a div with an attached superpower for animations just built in it. Anyway,
with so wait, so to my question though, am I still beholden to the world of transform properties and opacity, or can I animate sort of like to my heart's delight?
you're still stuck to some of those things.
Okay.
It will do its
I see.
best to.
That's why I know how the world works, because I was like, I don't just get off like that. It doesn't even
Yeah.
get that easy. Like they're like, oh no.
You still gotta be good, but it will do some of that work for you. So, like when it does the morph effect, it will be writing a transform for you. When it does, crossfade, it's doing the opacity work for you. So it's kind of only when.
So this is the part of the episode where we always knew that our children were going to come in and interrupt, and we talked about it, and we said, we're just going to do this. We're gonna children interrupting is a part of this podcast, and it happened. Very first one. That's why we planned for this. And by planned, I mean we just talked about it, and now I'm just talking as it's happening, and Adam is returning now, and I don't know if I'll keep this part
Aha! I
in the
could hear you the whole
podcast.
time. It was really fun. I'm like, I had a kid outside the door making a bunch of noise trying to get my attention. I'm like, I see what you're doing. I need to stop that right away because
Yeah.
it's totally not going to work.
Bad at CSS, good at parenting.
Trying to be good. I feel like all I can do is try to be good because kids they're hard. They're not going to like you no matter what. They're like, no, you just told me no. I hate you. You're like,
fine,
okay,
I won't play with that
I'm sorry
knife.
that that's how you feel.
This is unreasonable.
Oh man, we can't branch into the kid stories, but my kid just last week at the campfire, like a little hot burning coal shot out from the fire, and he was like, "Oh, that looks really cool. I'm gonna pick it up. It looks tangible, and I'm gonna hold." I'm like, "No, dude," but I'm like, I get it. It's like red
Right.
and shiny. I'm like, oh.
Too many cartoons where they're just like letting flames come out of their hands, and they're like, "This is my time. I finally get to do it."
Yep. Well, let's see. I feel like we got through most of the stuff in there. The view transitions work was good. Lots of ramp up. The concept of the image pair versus the group, I think that brought some clarity to me. Those are like the edgy, nasty details that you'll have to get into, maybe, but maybe not.
I feel like that's a good spot to wrap up at, because that's a ton. Like I mean, if my memory serves me correct, I think the journey we went on was we talked about like why view transition in the first place, and you gave us a very deep answer that most people, like I said, would be able to give. Like I know I wouldn't be able to, is that you, instead of going with nice transitions, you talked about how the difficulty of doing things like flip transitions, and that I can't go and repeat that. I will have to learn that when I edit through this podcast. But what basically flip is hard, lots of stuff involved. So instead, why don't we take a screenshot of the original state and compute the end state in CSS and let the browser do that hard work for us in the middle? Because that's who we like to do as developers. We like to just let the browser do all the work for us and then claim our job as hard. But no, actually, that's I wish it was that easy. It's not. But so basically, that's what view transitions does, where it's now a much easier tool from getting from one state to the other and letting the browser help you get there. And most commonly right now, people are probably going to be using that for page transitions, especially in spas and soon in MPAs. Eventually, we're going to be doing that more on the element level, or if you can still do that today. But I think as we get used to the API, that is, we'll get to the more of the element level. I saw that one Airbnb did where they did like the back and forward on the choosing, and you could see everything kind of squishing and morphing. It felt very real, and that was at the element level. And the difficulty there is that now, while the browser is doing a lot of work for us, there's all these new concepts to learn about the work that it's doing for us. And there's that footprint it's leaving that we have to learn to tap into. And a lot of those are the functional pseudo selectors. It feels so good to say
nice.
it. Though it felt way less fancy when you explained it. I was like, oh, it's a pseudo selector with the parentheses.
Which is parentheses. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was cool. It just sounds cool. No. But now we have all these new functional pseudo selectors. We can go through and we can use them for various life cycles of the animation, various parts of the animation, and that they all interplay with each other. And so you might have to set, with 100, height 100% or not, depending on your use case. That's just a throwback to yours. But basically, yeah. So the difficulty there is that if you're going to want to learn this API really well, or if you're going to want to do these transitions really well, you're going to have to learn this API really well. And the more you know this API, the more you know the work that the browser is doing for you, the better you can work with the browser on getting that result, rather than just doing what I commonly do, which is called try it and say, oh, okay, no, that didn't work. I mean, CSS is the ultimate like mess around and find out language. It's like that's just pretty much all we do.
Yep. Followed up quickly by JavaScript, where I think we
JavaScript.
do the same thing. We're like, didn't work.
Yeah.
I'll poke it again and poke it till it works and then move on.
No, TypeScript has
Excellent
really
recap there.
has really ended that though. With TypeScript, you're like, I'm gonna mess with it, and it's like, no, you're not. Nope. Type undefined of monofunct object is not equivalent to 17 lines later of error. And you're like, oh yes, I will definitely not copy the resulting type and paste it into the code it needs me to do and just say that it's typed now. Of course, you don't
Oh, I
like.
feel like I poke TypeScript just as much as JavaScript, because TypeScript is like, you can't do that, or this needs to be typed, or it keeps telling me all these like little tasks I have to do. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll go do that little task, and then that little task turns into 2 or 3 other little tasks, and I'm like, oh, I
Oh,
guess I'll go do that. And
we have to do a bad at CSS, but TypeScript. Like that'll be called the episode. But TypeScript ? And because Adam does not like TypeScript. I want to say doesn't like, but he's not a TypeScript fan. Adam's more of a
I'm just not a
JavaScript fan.
typed language fan. I come from typed
Yes.
languages. I know what I'm running from, and y'all are running towards a building that I'm like, that shit's on fire.
And so I'm a big TypeScript fan, but the more our friendship grows, the more that his thoughts get into my head, and then when I run into TypeScript errors, I just think of Adam being like, with his arms folded, being like, what did I say? What did I say? So I would really love to do that. So if you all want to do that, just let us know, because I would love to, because Adam I imagine, would only be bad at TypeScript, but by choice. So I would love to get some of it. And he can't run away from it. No one can run away from TypeScript at this point, especially with the stuff we do at work and all that.
Oh,
He's got to
yeah.
do a lot with TypeScript. So
I write a lot. Yeah.
I'd love to hear this. So, because that would be, so y'all let us know. But
I think that's a fun episode. You did a really good recap. I want to just share a demo that we'll put it in the show notes, and that is like a next good stepping stone for like, why in hell would I want to know these weird pseudo selectors and these other, like, it sounds like such a simple API, the functional pseudo selectors. It sounds so simple. It sounds like you just do some little CSS, you call one function, it's all good. No, it can get far more complicated than that. So I'm sharing a demo called View Transitions like isotope.js. Isotope.js was just a classic sort and filter algorithm that allowed you to do really cool interactive visual sorting and filtering. It's just really lovely.
With the lovely concept of position absolute.
With position absolute everything, which also made it really hard to use in a page, because you're like, what's the height of this stuff? It was like, download a plugin. The plugin will set the height after layout, and you're like, wow, this is really getting difficult. So I built it in CSS Grid with regular layout with view transitions, and I emulate every single aspect of what it does, which ends up being really complicated. Like, let's say you're going to, well, who cares? Well, maybe we'll cover it on another one, but go check out the demo, because it'll show these selectors that we talked about today, and it will show more. It'll attach only child onto one of those functional pseudo selectors. So you'll see combinations, the combinatorial results of using these APIs together. And
I love
what it takes to
results.
make a really
that was a really fancy, like, combinatorial results. Sorry. All right.
I'm glad it rolled out so easy. I thought it was going to be like combinatorial specificity. Ooh.
We just invented another JavaScript framework.
But yes, check out the demo for a way to, like, how do you make the old image go out in a different way? How do you make a new one come in? What if the old one doesn't have anywhere to go? Like, it doesn't have a transform to do. So all sorts of cool stuff like that. Check out that demo. And Yeah, I think that's pretty good for what I was bad at. I thought I was going to be good at that view transition button morphing thing. I was like, I'm going to knock this out. And then it ended up being really hard. And I was like, nope, I'm bad. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, forgot.
Well, that's the truth. We're all bad at CSS. It's just no matter how much you do it, you keep that humble attitude, or CSS will humble you.
Oh, mic drop, end episode.
Well, I'll take us out. Thank you all for joining. I'm like, I'll do the hard job here, okay, as my family gets home. But like we said, the kids will be in the podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we will be making more episodes and releasing them at a time that you will see them being released, because that is our time frame right now. So thank you.
Surprise.
Surprise. But we do actually, I'm not going to name names or anything yet, but we have a couple guests in the pipeline, and I'm excited. I'm very excited. That I almost said there's a couple I'm really excited about, in a way where I was like, wait, why would I say that? Because I'm excited about all the guests, but it's in a way where someone's like, wait, he's not excited about one of the guests.
Am I the
Right.
in or out guest?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Every guest comes on and they're like, which one am I? And I'm like, what? You listen that deep into the podcast? No, I'm kidding. But at some point we'll have to end this podcast. So if you like this podcast, let us know. Let us know and tell us the things you want us to talk about, because we will literally talk about anything, and we don't know if you'll like that or not. So just let us know. And thank you all for listening, and we'll see you at the next Bad at CSS podcast.